Hey, welcome to episode 80 of Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. You know, it's hitting another decade. We're getting into the 80s now. 20 episodes to go until we hit episode 100. So I got to think about something special to do with that. That'll probably happen in the winter, December, January-ish. And I'll have to think about how I can freshen up Fresh Air at 5 at episode 100. I'll get some more different music, probably different transitions, things like that, because it's a big deal. Maybe a new stickers. Oh yeah, I'm gonna do new stickers, get some new colors and things like that. Okay, enough about that. I'm thinking about podcasting this week, and that was a significant part of my week's reflections and learning. And I listened to episode 113 of the Che and FAAF show, how to start a school podcast in your classroom. And I also listened to episode 203 of the Chris Nesi, or not the Chris Nesi show, it's the House of Ed Tech, which is the Chris Nesi show, and how Chris talks about podcasting in his school. Okay, so there's other things I talked about. Take a listen. Thanks for being here. Thanks for jumping in and giving Fresh Air at 5, episode 80 a go. Tell your friends. Subscribe yourself. Tell your friends to subscribe. And you can go and write an Apple podcast review if you would as well. All right, and without further ado, episode 80 coming your way right now.
I'm Alfonso Mendoza, host of the My Ed Tech Life podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. I'm your host, Brian Carpenter. Fresh Air at 5 is my regular attempt to exercise by walking about my neighborhood to take in podcast content, then reflect in an unedited video, which I finally post to my Twitter channel. This podcast will be a regular collection of the audio from these selfie videos. You can follow me on Twitter at Fresh Air at 5 or check out my website, briancarpenter.com, for other content I have created and collected. Hey, PL on July 11, 2022, out for Fresh Air at 5 on this beautiful Monday morning. This past weekend, I got to escape one up country and got to go for an overnight camp trip at a lake. And my buddy and I, we went fishing, caught a few fish. It was great, relaxing. And now I'm back here in town with my family, going through our weekly things. And yeah, it's been good. I'm enjoying my time. Have to go to work today. I'm supervising exams, but that's fine because it's summertime and it's a lot lower key than normal. All right, so this morning as I'm listening to podcasts, I listened to episode, I believe, 54 of Just a Teacher podcast with Trav Golter out of Australia. And Trav, great to hear your voice again. You know, it's just so fun to hear you talk with your guests, and you're so personable and that. So take a listen to Trav Golter because he's got good things to say with his guests that he has on. He's making good selections about people to talk to and hear their stories, their origin stories. And in this episode 54 of Just a Teacher podcast, Trav has on guest Elizabeth Peterson out of New Hampshire. And Elizabeth is on the way to the beach right now as she was talking with Trav. She was prepping to go on her summer vacation, and she is an arts integration specialist at her school. She works with her class and does arts integration with music, but not as a music teacher. She's a classroom teacher that integrates arts and music into her classroom teaching space through the SEL framework. She has an acronym called SEAL, S-E-A-L, for Social Emotional Arts Learning. And how does art fit into allowing students to address their thoughts and questions, and how can you use art to work on SEL with students? Part of my thing is a creative and teach in media. I'll be right back. Hang on. One more thing for July 11, 2022. Continuing my thoughts on episode 54 of Just a Teacher podcast as Trav Golter talks with Elizabeth Peterson about SEAL, social, emotional, and arts learning, and how art fits into our regular curriculum. As a media design teacher at my school with our in-building students that come, I struggle with what to do, how to do some crafts and some creative tasks with them, and what do I have them to do? My job as a media design teacher is to teach them the design process for solving problems and being able to look at a design and how can that serve a need in the world. And SEL can probably provide a whole lot of framework for that. When they come back from the summer, have them talk about something that impacted them in the summer in a creative way and share their learning about that impactful thing. I remember when I was in grade 12, my English teacher had us write about an impactful thing that happened in the summertime, and I wrote about my brush with racism, and that really opened up a door for me to express my feelings about something that I had not experienced directly prior, and he used that as a creative way to. It was English class, so we were writing on paper, but writing a paragraph, and but how can I use media and graphic design and graphic arts to have students share their feelings about a topic? We can learn about something, or even just start talking about something and have a word be part of a design. I've heard it said that if students are working on like a graphic or a project, and it's like one small part of a bigger thing, that they're thinking a whole lot about the bigger thing, even though they're just working on maybe the word kind. All right, Elizabeth Peterson and Trav Golter, hope you have a fabulous day. Thank you for your thoughts, and I hope that some of my reflections are helping some of you out there. Have a fabulous day. Take care. Bye. Hey, PLN, July 12, 2022, out for fresh air at 5 later in the day. I had to drop my truck off to get some work done, and so I'm walking over to a Starbucks far away to get some walk in, listen to some podcast, and enjoy the sunshine here. Currently, we're probably about 24 degrees and headed to a high of 30. I just took in episode 77 of Overthrowing Education with Batsheva Frankel, and she had on guests on this episode, Jim Hahn and John Cassie of Qualia, and they're founders of Arte, and they're involved in leadership at Arte. I didn't recall exactly how they're involved in the founding and other things of Qualia. But this is the school that Batsheva teaches at and shares project-based learning ideas with us from the work that she does at her school. And these guys, I really appreciate Jim and John sharing the depth of what they do with students and how they have taken project-based learning and actually made it possible to be like course-like learning. And so the students are involved in choosing courses, working through the details of how they learn at Qualia. And Qualia is about an experience. Qualia is a philosophy term about experience over getting the knowledge of it and learning the knowledge. And so it's about experiential learning. Really appreciate what I heard. And at the end, they had a 5-minute game show where they talked about band names and board games and cocktails. And this episode, Batsheva, is episode 77. One of my favorite bands in high school was a group called the 77s, and I listened to them a lot. And so the lead singer's name was Mike Rowe. So yeah, go check that out. There's a band for you. All right, have a good day, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. One more thing for July 12, 2022, wrapping up Fresh Air at 5 today as I was out getting my truck serviced. So I took a walk in a different part of my town. I'm in the Parkade right now. Nice and cool down here because it's getting pretty toasty out there. All right, this last segment as I listened to episode 110 of EdTech Bites with Gabe Carrillo. Thank you, Gabe, for another engaging conversation that you had with an inspiring educator. And this conversation you had today on episode 110 was with Jed Stefanowicz. And I will have to look up his name to spell it. And Jed, thank you so much for bringing your passion for digital learning. And what does that mean in our post-pandemic way of thinking now, and how much and important is digital learning? How are we bringing the 4 C's and the other 4 C's and activate, innovate, and motivate into our classrooms? It's super critical that we are creative as educators and not going back to the same thing that we have done, but how can we make it more applicable? I like how you talked about wellness and wellness as a part of one of the 3 words you mentioned towards the end, and I can't remember exactly, but how you talked about digital citizenship as part of the wellness conversation now, because the wellness conversation is so critical, and we as educators understand that, but putting some bits onto that, how do we take care of ourselves with our devices? How is our social media affecting the choices that we're making, the people that we are in contact with, those that, affects our family, affects our real life, IRL, compared to the digital world that we live in. And for our students, that is pretty blurry, and it is pretty much the same thing compared to us old people that grew up in the 1900s, and so, so I appreciate that. Thanks so much. I'm going to go take a look at your book, and I appreciate your in-depth thoughts about digital learning today compared to what it was 15, 20 years ago. All right, thanks, Gabe. Talk to you guys. Bye-bye. Hey, PLN, July 13, 2022, out here for Fresh Air at 5, midday on July 13th, and it's a beautiful day. This is the banter part where I just talk about myself and things that are going on with me, and, well, getting my wife prepped for going on a kayak trip this weekend. Her and our friend Joanne, are going to go on an ocean kayaking trip out of Vancouver and cross Howe Sound and paddle around there and stay 2 nights out. And so it's super exciting that they get to go do that. We have a tandem kayak and getting that rigged up and ready to go so that they can float away on Saturday morning. All right, so that's a bit of what's going on with me here. And my daughter's going to BC Bears rugby camp tomorrow, so that's pretty exciting. Our other daughter's going to work tonight at McDonald's, loves that. And my son, he's doing well in his electrical program, so at the University of Fraser Valley, so that's awesome. All right, so that's part of what I do is I podcast, and I don't know what people think, because I don't hear a lot of feedback from people about why they listen to my podcast, but you know what, this is my podcast and this is what I do, and so I'm hoping that you really enjoy what I do and how I do it. Start off with the date, a little bit of banter, and then I talk about things that I've listened to as I'm out here walking in my neighborhood. So walking in my neighborhood is my exercise that I gets my heart rate going, and I learn stuff while I'm doing so. So listening to podcasts is a way that I do get a lot of professional development every day. It keeps me learning and keeps the information flowing, keeps my brain going, and that's really awesome. So today, the reason I'm saying all these things is I listened to episode 113 of the FAAF show, where they talk about starting a student-led podcast. I'll be right back because I don't know how much time I've got left in this segment. Talk to you soon. I'll be right back. Hang on. One more thing for July 13, 2022. As I'm out for Fresh Air at 5, I'm listening to the FAAF show, episode 113. Kind of funny that it's on the 13th that I'm listening to this. It's episode 113. Okay, numbers are kind of funny that way, and I like that. So as I'm listening to the FAAF show, FAAF, they have a fantastic podcast. If you haven't listened to their podcast, I would really encourage you to do so, because they bring information and content in a host and co-host and co-host style where they talk back and forth and discuss topics of relevance to them in their teaching space, things that they are doing. And I really like how you guys do that. You banter back and forth, kind of like Ray Hewart and Jeff Gargis on the Teach Better podcast used to do, and other places where you have a back and forth between the podcasters. So you support each other, you work together as a team to bring the content. Different than a solo podcast, and these are the different styles of podcasts that you can have. There's a narrative where you're telling a story. There could be an interview style podcast where a host is interviewing a guest, which is another format that I'm very familiar with. You could have a panel discussion where a panel of people, a group of people are sitting around discussing, kind of like morning TV, where they sit around, they talk about things that are going on in the news and other things like that. So there's lots of different ways of having a conversation, and it's all important, significant medium for communication. It's oral tradition, oral storytelling, oral communication is so important. We have typically in the past chalked that up to doing a presentation in front of the school. Getting in front of the microphone and speaking. Public speaking is a way of doing oral communication. But that's not the only way. You can put a microphone in front of somebody and you can have them talk. But there's lots of different ways of doing so. Take a listen to this podcast and really dig Chan Pav's description of how things go. This is inspiring me. I was considering getting going with a student podcast in the fall, but how to get going, I've got some great ideas now of how to do that. I'll be right back. The last thing for July 13, 2022, as I continue to reflect on the Chan Pav Show, episode 113, where they talk about student-led podcasts and getting started in your classroom. What do you need? You need hardware, you need software, you need organization, you need ways of recording and getting started, and a time to play and a time to work on the equipment so that you become familiar with that. Something else that's really important that I heard Chan Pavs talk about was that you need podcasting can be a team event where you have your people that are speaking, but you also have your editors. You have those that are doing the graphics. You have those that are doing, the show notes and recording things like that. This guy here for Fresh Start 5, I do all of it because I got the media, I got the graphic arts part down. Hopefully it's good. I've got the, show notes down. I record what I'm listening to and saying. And then I've got, the recording where I'm walking down the street here in my studio, which has got pretty low tech. Got my earbuds so I can hear. I've got my microphone, I think that's in my earbuds, and I've got my camera here so that I can see myself talking, but I don't have to be using a video camera to do so. It helps me so that I'm not talking all by myself into the air. I'm actually can see myself talking, and I'm sharing it with you this way. So that's the way I do it. Yes, the magnificent microphone. Get it? That's a place to jumpstart listening to podcast or doing podcasting in your classroom. I am going to probably read that story to my students in the fall. Okay, I gotta go. It's getting really noisy out here. Talk to you soon. Hey, have a fabulous day. Bye-bye. Hey, PLN, Thursday, July 14, 2022, out here for Fresh Air at 5, coming to you live from the University of British Columbia, out in the athletic park. As I am out here at UBC, University of British Columbia, today, bringing my daughter out to BC Bears development camp, and it's an opportunity for her to do some rugby development, work with some other high-level athletes from around our province, and with some fantastic coaches. And she's here for camp for the next 4 days, so kind of a big deal. My daughter, she's just heading into grade 9 and never done anything like this before, so we dropped her off at the residences. They met their team, and one thing leads to another, and I'm out walking. So I'm out here walking right now, out in the athletic field. This is where PRCs were held a couple weeks ago, and out of PRCs, the team was selected from those athletes in U14 girls to come to development camp. There's also U16 and U18 development camps going on, so that's pretty exciting. All right, so as I'm out walking, I walked down south past all the residences and headed out towards Southwest Marine Drive. Never been out that way before. I ended up at ocean sea level out at Wreck Beach, and there was nothing going on at Wreck Beach for those of you that know Wreck Beach. I'm out walking, and I listened to episode 7 of the EdTech News Brief with Jake Miller, and as I was walking, and Jake, thank you so much for bringing us the news from ISTE about a whole lot of new changes and updates that are going on with the video platforms that we are fond of and that we use in our classrooms. Everything from flip.com, which was flipgrid.com, to Mote, Edpuzzle, Loom, and Mote as well. So there's a bunch that are in there. So if you want some updates, go take a listen to the EdTech News Brief that Jake brings us from ISTE. He was a guest at the end of the new EdTech Classrooms live stream, and so that's where this content is coming from. Met with Sam Carey and Tom Gibson. All right, guys, we'll talk to you soon. Got to go watch some rugby now. All right, bye-bye. Hey PLN, welcome to July 15, 2022 for Fresh Air at 5. And you know what? What is it right now? It must be about 28 degrees Celsius and pretty sunny and toasty. And I'm out here for Fresh Air at 5, pulling my summer trick of not walking at 5 o'clock a.m. I probably should have, because it would be a lot cooler, a lot more comfortable. So maybe next week I should get into my 5 o'clock routine so that I can enjoy the cooler weather and then not be walking in the heat of the day. But hey, it's summertime. I decided to sleep in, and I'm listening to a podcast now and enjoying my learning middle of the day, and all that goes on. So yes, this is Fresh Air at 5, episode 80. If you're listening to the daily, the whole episode will come out later tonight, and you can catch that on Anchor, Apple Podcast, and Spotify, and other places. So that's Fresh Air at 5, my podcast. All right, so as we're talking about podcasting, I spun up episode 203 of House of Ed Tech, as Chris Nessie brings us his podcast called Twitter Spaces, and about student podcasting and our school podcasting, and how in episode 201 of House of Ed Tech, Chris brought us the nuts and bolts of his experience doing it with his students in his school, the Zebra Podcast Network. And so that was pretty cool. Go take a listen to episode 201 of the House of Ed Tech to get all the details. But on episode 203, he talked with Derek Larson, who was a guest in his home for a short part of Derek's vacation across the country, from Utah to New Jersey, Eastern Seaboard, all those places. So that was pretty cool to hear Derek talking with Chris as they sat at his Studio C dining room table. Then Chris talked and shared his Twitter Spaces from June 2nd recording that he had with a number of people. And I don't know how to connect with those people that were on Twitter Spaces June 2nd with Chris Nessie on the House of Ed Tech, but they talked about podcasting in schools. Okay, I'm coming right back. Hang on. The last thing for July 15th, 2022. This is me continuing my thoughts about the House of Ed Tech, episode 203, as Chris was talking and sharing Twitter Spaces and the new audio kind of clubhouse-ish atmosphere that Twitter's providing for Twitter users. And I haven't done it myself. I was on Clubhouse one time, so that was a fair experience. Not my favorite place, but I can see the value in Twitter Spaces because it's in something that we're already using, which is Twitter. And then it's just a way of connecting in a conversational voice manner with people. So, okay, that's me talking about Twitter Spaces a little bit. Haven't done it, but it's sitting right there. So maybe I should do that, do a Fresh Air at 5 Twitter Spaces sometime, and then maybe have some people on Fresh Air at 5 that can't actually physically walk with me. Oh, this is gonna be good, Chris. I think this is gonna be fun. Maybe Chris, you could join me someday. We'll have to set it up so that it happens, but I'll have to learn how to do it all on my mobile, so while I'm walking. Okay. Back to student podcasts. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts about and questions with Chris about student podcasting in your building and all that goes on with that. I started Fresh Air at 5 a year and a half ago, and about a year and a half ago, a couple months in, that I had been doing Fresh Air at 5, I decided to talk to my students about my experience of podcasting and what does it mean. And I had, at the time, 8 grade 11 and 12 students that I kind of dragged along and had them jump in with me and do a podcast with me. And we called it the Junk Drawer Podcast. The Junk Drawer Podcast. And if you're looking up AVS, Apples for Virtual School, you can just do a search for that and find that. And we had, I think, 8 episodes about items in your junk drawer. And so that was a cool experience. What I'm learning, seeing here with podcasting, is that there's different ways of doing podcasts with students. You can do podcasts a number of different ways. I gotta be right back because I got a third thing to say. Hang on. And now this is the last thing for Friday, July 15, 2022, as I'm reflecting on episode 203 of the House of Ed Tech with Chris Nesi. And it's called Twitter Spaces, Student Podcasting. And okay, I was talking about how I started up the Junk Drawer Podcast with my students about a year and a half ago. And we put that out on Anchor. You can find it on Spotify. You can find it in different places because we went and published actual student words about items in the junk drawer. I had them pick a paper bag that had an item from the junk drawer, like staplers and screws and thumbtacks and tape and hole punches and things like that. And they picked an item which was there. Oh, this is what I have to talk about. I did provide them with some place to start and some research websites that I found a list of all these items on. And from there, they recorded their voice talking about what they had learned about the junk drawer item. So, was it perfect? Nope. We were using beautiful audio editor online, and that editor had some clicking and ticking and had some audio artifacts in there that wasn't pleasant, but we still published because we had a deadline and we said we were going to do so. So the students were nervous about it, but I think it's all said and done, they smiled. So those students are gone from my space now, but I'm going to work on this fall doing something similar with another group of students. So I need some topics, I need some things to think about. Okay, I was listening to episode 113 of the FAAF show, which is an earlier part of episode 80 of Fresh Air at 5. So if you want to go hear me talk about what I learned about podcasting there, jump back a few segments earlier in episode 80 of Fresh Air at 5, because I talked about what I learned from FAAF about student podcasting in the classroom. And they have a breakdown. They have kind of a program and 7 or 8 different things to think about that are really, really helpful. Chris, you should listen to that because that's some great ideas as well. I like what you're doing. Thanks for pushing me into doing this. And I'm running out of time, so I gotta go. Have a happy Friday. Bye-bye. As my one word for 2021 is appreciate, I appreciate you giving me a listen as I've created this podcast experience for you. It's a unique Blinkist or Coles Notes version of the content I take in, like a highlight reel, so that you can hopefully find other interesting podcasts you may not have considered before. I've recorded the specific podcast episodes in the show notes for your learning convenience. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes. And if you enjoy this podcast and its format, share it with someone else. Tweet about your experience or give it a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Fresh Air at 5 can also be found on Voice Ed Radio. Your voice is right here, and on the Education Podcast Network, Podcasts for Educators, Podcasts by Educators. I hope you have a fantastic day and get some fresh air before the day is out, and take care of yourself because you're worth it.